Alrighty, what is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the latest that's been going on in MMA, PFL, One Championship, UFC. I'm going to be talking about it all today. We all know what happened with PFL buying Bellator. I'm sure all of you know by now, and I'm going to be talking about what it means for the MMA community itself. Not only that, but I'm going to be discussing the landscape of the MMA community. So the UFC, One Championship, Rising, PFL, mainly going to be talking about the big three though. Now is PFL, One Championship, and UFC, and kind of what these promotions are looking for in their audiences, which audiences they might capture, as far as you as the viewer, which promotions you might be wanting to watch instead of trying to watch all three or only watch the UFC, just to give you guys more insight onto what you're getting with each of these promotions. So with that being said, I'm gonna start by talking about the UFC. However, before I do that, I want to let you guys know that I know I haven't been going live very often. I am gonna try and do these once a week, depending on what topics are out there and things like that. But guys, don't be afraid to send me your questions. Please send them and we'll answer them in the podcast. I'll answer them going live. I want to do more things like this, more Q&As and stuff like that. That way I get to know you guys a little bit better, and I get to interact with you guys directly. But with that being said, don't forget to subscribe, comment your thoughts down below, and give this stream a like. That way we could push it out to more viewers. But getting things started here, I want to go ahead and I want to talk about the UFC. Oh yeah, and while we're talking about these different promotions, I want to go ahead and just put on some One Championship for you guys to watch. Now, One Championship, just to give you guys an overview, has kickboxing fights, Muay Thai fights, and MMA fights, usually all on the same card, right? So I'm not gonna go full screen because I don't want to get copyrighted, but speaking about that, that's one of the reasons why it's different from the UFC and from PFL. Now, before we get into the landscape of the global MMA organizations, right, where they went rank in the world and what's what, first I want to go ahead and I want to talk about the US. The US had three main organizations as far as professional fighters and the big, the big markets and where they can make the most money. First, obviously, was the UFC, biggest pay, biggest viewership, biggest audience, and things like that. A lot of the casual fans only watch the UFC, only know of the UFC because it was first, right? Number two was Bellator. Now, I don't know if they were the second promotion to really start in the US. Actually, I know that Scott Coker used to be the president of Strikeforce, or he used to be one of the higher ups in Strikeforce, matchmaker, whatnot. After UFC bought them, he went over and started Bellator, and that's how that got created. Ended up acquiring a lot of good fighters. Ended up putting up a bunch of shows, paying fighters good money. However, the problem with Bellator is that it partnered with Showtime. I think if Bellator never partnered with Showtime, they would have, one, had better promotion. Sure, Showtime is a big name, but as far as these things go, as far as getting into MMA, like, Showtime is now shutting down their whole sports division. So I don't even know what Showtime does other than boxing and MMA, and with Bellator and stuff like that. I guess they have reality shows or things like that, but I don't. The Showtime and Bellator, that partnership was a mistake. Before that, Bellator was just seen as number two to the UFC. It was kind of, if you leave the UFC, maybe the Bellator will pick you up and things like that. But that wasn't the case as of late. As of late, yeah, sure, ex-UFC fighters would go there, but also they were scooping up a lot of the good US talent within the country before the UFC, and so they were actually creating good competition between the UFC and Bellator. Now, while Bellator would never be able to cross promote with the UFC, they did cross promote with Rizin, and they were able to showcase their talent, showing that they have top world class talent. I mean, in Bellator, Rizin versus Bellator, if y'all watch that card, I think it was like a clean sweep from Bellator. AJ McKee fought, Patricky Pitbull fought. It was a clean sweep from the Bellator champions versus the Rizin champions, and that's part of the reason why I'm not going to be talking about Rizin today, because Rizin is one of the leaders in global MMA, and so is what is it, ABC or ACB, Absolute Championship of Burkut. It's like one of those Eastern European organizations. Those are all world leaders in MMA, but I'm talking about the big three today. I'm going to be talking about UFC One Championship and now the PFL. So, going back to the whole US landscape, right? Going back to the, oh, by the way, guys, if y'all have y'all's thoughts, y'all have questions, go ahead. Feel free to interrupt me and just list them down below. I'm watching to see what you guys say, and I'll go ahead and answer your questions whenever I have time. As a matter of fact, just to be on the safe side, let's go ahead and do this just to make sure I'm seeing all of you guys' questions. Okay. All right. I wasn't even watching the fights. All right. So, getting back to what I was saying. Give me just a second, guys. Sorry. Okay. So, I was discussing the whole landscape of the U.S. and how it came to be, how Bellator came to be, especially because Bellator now just got bought by the PFL. Well, UFC was number 1, Bellator was number 2, so who was number 3? Well, at first it was the World Series of Fighting, and they were competing with like the LFA and things like that. World Series of Fighting, big fighters that came from I believe Mateusz Gamrot, he used to fight in the World Series of Fighting way back when. I know he also fought in Brave, I believe, as well. Justin Gaethje, that was probably the biggest one. Marlon Moraes, they were both champions in the World Series of Fighting. So then the World Series of Fighting didn't go out of business. Instead, they actually got more investors, and they decided to turn into the PFL, which is the Professional Fighters League, which is today, now, the second biggest organization. They were the third as the World Series of Fighting. They were also the third as the PFL. But now they're number 2 because they recently just bought Bellator, acquired all their roster, their talent, acquired their promotion, just in the whole sense of the thing, right? So they're number 2 without a doubt, right? Now, a lot of people are wondering, can they compete with the UFC? No. I'm just still going to watch the UFC. Why would I go and watch the PFL when it's just less talent? I want to watch Bellator talent, see second tier talent. Well, first let me tell you, it's not second tier talent. The top fighters in Bellator, like say for instance, Patchy Mix just went ahead and beat Sergio Pettis. He can very well beat Sean O'Malley. He can very well take down and maul Sean O'Malley. Now, are we ever going to see that fight? Probably not. Are we ever going to get to see that matchup in general, or is this ever going to really be a conversation? Maybe if they keep winning. But the top of the PFL now, or Bellator, with Johnny Eblen as well, can very well compete with the top of the UFC now. Where these promotions, these second tier promotions, suffer is in the depth of their talent, which is now gonna bring me into One Championship. Well, actually, let's hold our horses. Let's hold on a little bit. We're not gonna talk about One Championship yet, even though that is what we're watching. Okay. So the reason why we're not gonna talk about One Championship yet. Okay. So we know that about the talent now, right? We know about the talent. We know about the landscape of the U.S., right? MMA promotions. But why would we watch the PFL over the UFC, even if it has top-notch talent? Why would we watch it over the UFC? Well, let me tell you this: it's new. It offers something new. Not only does it have giant investors and they're going to be able to continue promoting and things like that, but everything about the PFL is new. That's the first reason. Now, what's new about it? Well, for one instance, there's no elbows. I think that might throw off some viewers, or it might just make it a cleaner sport, right? And the second reason is that it is being made more of like a sport. Fighting really isn't a sport, right? I think we can all agree on that. We've seen the UFC, we've seen Pride. Sports are football, soccer, basketball, depending on where you are in the world, baseball. These are sports, these are games, these are things that you can win and lose with minimal suffering, and your objective isn't really to hurt the opponent, which is why there's injuries, but really it's to score. While in fighting, you scoring is hurting the opponent. That is your objective. That is the reason why you do what you do. Now, okay, give me a second. I feel like I'm about to get copyrighted, so let me go ahead and give this a pause. So that's my whole reasoning on why MMA isn't a sport, right? It's fighting. It's not a game. However, PFL, with no elbows, it eliminates a lot of the blood, a lot of the damage. The point system, where if you... Very loud. Way to interrupt the stream. We got a new subscriber. What is up, man? How are we doing? So, as I was saying, hold on, let me go ahead and... Yeah. So as I was saying, as far as the PFL being a sport, as far as there not being any elbows and this point system, right? So the way the point system works, and we can actually go ahead and look this up. Actually, I want you guys to be able to read this with me. So. Let's go ahead and get these things up on the screen. All right, can you see it? So as far as why it's making it like a very sport central, and I feel like this is a part of the reason why ESPN are letting them stream or is partnering with the PFL. But the number of fights, right? Each person is gonna have, I think, 4 or 6 regular season fights. So okay, here it is. Each fighter will be scheduled to fight twice during the regular season with at least 30 days in between each bout. Very, very consistent. These fighters are being kept very, very consistent. Anthony Pettis went on to say that it was the hardest tournament or any style of format that he's ever been a part of. It shows it's just pure competition. In the event that any fighter fights only once during the regular season for any reason, such fighter may be considered in the division standings and for qualification into the playoffs based off their performance. So barring any injuries, it will be the people who fought twice during the regular season. But if there are injuries, then they can choose from the people who only fought once, maybe. And one of these fighters to keep in mind, Rob Wilkinson, he fought Israel Adesanya back in the UFC in middleweight, moved up to light heavyweight, hasn't lost since. For an example, he had one fight in the PFL. However, he didn't qualify for the playoffs because it was just one fight during the regular season. If there was an injury in the 205-pound division, he would have been able to compete in that year. He would have been able to get called up. But because there wasn't, he had to wait till the next season, to where he won both of his fights in the regular season, went on to fight Thiago Santos in the championship, and that fight was called a draw because he popped for some steroids. So all null and void in that aspect. But as far as going back to why the PFL is more sport-like, A win gets you 3 points, a draw gets you 1, obviously a loss gets you 0. But if you win and you win in the first round, then it's 6 points total, because it's 3 points for a first round stoppage, right? And then 2 points for a second round and 1 point for a third round. And as far as decision, it's just the 3 points. It's just a win, right? So based off of how you win and if you win, that's what determines if you go to the playoffs, if you get to fight for that $1 million prize and whatnot, right? So not only is it a sport, but then they have the grand prize of $1 million. Then they're coming up with the whole super fight division. So pay is only gonna start going up. Now, I think for now we've spoken enough about the PFL, and I'm gonna go on to one championship. So as far as the UFC, let's recap a little bit. Give me just a second. I'll switch this back. So, as far as the UFC is concerned, what you're getting with the UFC. Sorry, give me just a second. The UFC stands for it's as real as it gets, right? It's as real as it gets. You're gonna get the drama show. You're gonna get the best of the best. You're gonna get the most talent stacked MMA fights that you can get in the world. You're getting that original content, right? It's the best promotion. You're gonna get the best stories and marketing and things like that as well. All of these is what you get with the UFC. Now, with the PFL, what did I just tell you? It's more of a sport. You're gonna get something new. It's gonna be clean. They have all different kinds of camera angles and different kinds of stats. I mean, the ref cam is very interesting in it of itself. I mean, if you might not be able to see every angle of a grappling scenario, or of eye pokes and things like that, or nut shots that maybe you didn't get to see, but the ref, you get to see what he's seeing. So all that controversy that we get in the UFC, oh, is it an early stoppage? Oh, what is he seeing? Oh, this and that. Now you have some context behind it, because now you have a ref cam, right? Not only do you have that, but then you have all these little stats like, oh, who threw a faster punch, or, things like that. They have all these kind of crazy, weird stats. They have the fans' votes on who they think is winning, and all kinds of different things, right? And then we have one championship. Now, one championship, a lot of you guys don't know about one championship. MMA Junkyard, I just listened to their stream about this whole PFL situation. They didn't mention the one championship at all. Let's get one thing straight. The UFC, yes, that's number one. Right behind it is one championship. Bellator wouldn't even be in the same conversation as one championship in the UFC. One championship, what is that? That's the promotion, MMA promotion, all the way across the world. So as far as Singapore, China, where their athletes going, Russia, a lot of Russian athletes are going there. This is the MMA promotion that just started 10 years ago, and they're already, as far as every single streaming platform and as far as total streams, they already have more. They're getting more daily views than the UFC. Now, are they a bigger promotion? Do they pay more? No, I'm not saying that. But they do get more views as far as social media and things like that are concerned. They also promote their fighters very well. If you loved watching Pride, you're old head. You loved watching Pride. You like watching Rising. One championship is also for you. As far as MMA, they also bring something new to where, and let me go ahead and transition this back, and we can start watching some one championship again, for sure. But they also do hydration tests, right? So there's no more cutting weight. If anything, it's very minimal weight cuts. I don't know about their drug testing. I don't know if they even have drug testing. Maybe they do, but I'm sure a lot of their athletes are on some shit, so you get to see some crazy shit like that. But not only the hydration test, but man, they have some of the best athletes in the world. Not just in MMA, but also in kickboxing. You get Muay Thai with 4-ounce gloves. Do you know how exciting Muay Thai is? I mean, all of you guys who might be a bleed MMA fan, or you like watching boxing because it's just striking, boxing's fucking boring compared to Muay Thai. Now, I love the sweet science, but compared to Muay Thai, especially in 4-ounce gloves. Boxing it's ridiculously boring. And this is me, a guy who is a fan of every combat sport. I mean, god damn it, I watch wrestling, I watch submission grappling. I'm a fan of combat sports in total, right? But sometimes, like, I just try to watch this whole Shakur Stevenson fight. That shit was, yeah, they were booing from round number 1, and I almost fell asleep in the middle of the goddamn day. So, yeah, that was boring. But one championship has kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, and they don't just stay in kickboxing, Muay Thai, and MMA. Matter of fact, we just saw the MMA bantamweight world champion Fabricio Andrade, someone who beat John Lineker twice. First one was actually a no contest, but I feel like he beat him twice. Former UFC fighter, former UFC contender, still doing big things. Fabricio Andrade defeated John Lineker and then ended up going over to kickboxing to try and fight Jonathan Haggerty, the Muay Thai world champion, for the vacant kickboxing bantamweight world championship of the world. And for those of you who don't know, kickboxing and Muay Thai, these are all widespread sports, right? It's kind of like boxing, to where there's not just one promotion for them. These fighters kind of are independent contractors and fight around. But in one championship, they try and get all of the best ones from all these other different promotions and stuff like that. So they're independent contractors. They can still fight outside of one championship, which is also really cool. But when fighting in one championship, they're fighting world-class guys. And Fabricio Andrade actually had a kickboxing background, but we saw the level of Jonathan Haggerty when he just dismantled Fabricio Andrade and was able to just murder him. I mean, it was brutal. I mean, you saw high-level striking in a striking sport, in a striking setting. They also have the various differences in arena, as far as if they're going to have a ring, like you see here, the ropes at Lumpini Stadium, or if they're going to have a cage. So you get to see MMA with punt kicks, knees to a grounded opponent. It's just, honestly, I like watching one championship cards better than the UFC. Obviously, I don't know their fighters as well, but it is more exciting. They have compared to the UFC, I want you to actually take this stat in mind. Compared to the UFC, one championship has a 70% finish rate in all of its fights. 70% finish rate. While the UFC has under a 50%. I think it's like 48% or 49% finish rate. Now, I understand it's harder to finish people in MMA because there's more ways to protect yourself and stuff like that. But even the MMA fights, guys, even the matter of fact, this is the MMA fight we're seeing right here. But you can knee to the grounded opponent. You saw Demetrius Johnson get knocked out by Adriano Moraes that way. And then obviously DJ came back and proved that he's the GOAT. But this rule set, the MMA fight, the judging set on how the scoring system, on how the MMA fights are scored as a whole, it's no longer round by round. Now it's like if there was nothing much going on in the first 2 rounds, and you almost get finished in the 3rd round, the other person is going to win the fight, even if you slightly edged them in those rounds, because it's judged as a whole fight. It's no longer round by round basis. And I think that not only the scoring system, not only the rules, but also the way, personally, now this is personal, but the way that Chatri Sityodtong, their CEO, promotes the fighters and allows them to have sponsorships and gives them countless bonuses. Like pretty much every finish, you get a bonus, $50,000 bonus. And the way Chatri is building this promotion, I think, is more exciting and is better than the UFC. So what you get with one championship is the home of martial arts. And I almost forgot one more thing. I almost forgot maybe even the most interesting thing about it. They also do jiu-jitsu. They have jiu-jitsu competitions. It's like their cards are mixed. They have MMA, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and a jiu-jitsu competition all on the same card. So all these events that you have are mixed. They're going to have, I think, 4 events in the U.S. So when we're talking about these promotions, when we're talking about the biggest promotions in the world, we're not just talking about the UFC or the PFL. Keep that in mind. The one championship is the biggest promotion on the other side of the world, and they are going to be bringing their audience and their viewership and their events to the U.S. in 2024. That's a big deal. That is a very big deal. And so when we're talking about this, right? When we're talking about the new, I guess, landscape of MMA, right? When we're talking about the new landscape of MMA now, the PFL has a real chance at competing with the UFC. Not because of the talent. They have good talent, yes, don't get me wrong. But not because of the talent. That's not why I'm saying this. I'm saying this strictly because they bring something new. One Championship has a great chance at competing with the UFC. Matter of fact, the UFC has to compete with them overseas because they're the world leaders overseas, right? And now they're bringing more of their content to the U.S., right? So they're gonna be getting our viewership and things like that. The more people know about them, and I'm gonna continue covering them as well. But they're also a giant promotion, very new but giant as well. And then we get to the UFC. UFC #1 world leader. I don't see the PFL passing it up anytime soon. Not in the U.S. But what we can say is that us as viewers, we all have something to look forward to. Us as viewers, we all have different, like, if we're not feeling like watching the drama show, we're not going to watch the UFC. We might watch PFL. We might watch the sporty version. If there's something big going on in the PFL, like someone needs 3 points, they need a first round finish in order to get to the playoffs, to be back-to-back champion, or some big shit like that, we'll be able to tune into the PFL. If we want to watch Francis Ngannou, the real baddest man on the planet, fight and take on Deontay Wilder, do this mixed rules fight. I mean, we have very, very lenient ownership in PFL. It's not strict. It's not, oh, you have to wear this, and this sponsorship. Oh, you have to fight by this, and this. If you don't take this fight, you're going to get cut and things like that. In the PFL, well, yeah, you have to take these fights because it's a season, right? Then there's playoffs, and then there's a Super Bowl. But they're also creating this pay-per-view division to where they have Jake Paul, they got Francis Ngannou, now they're talking about Ngannou versus Wilder in a mixed rules fight, kind of like One Championship did with Rodtang and Demetrius Johnson. I mean, the MMA landscape is better than it's ever been, and I can say that without a doubt. It's better than it's ever been. There's more shit to watch than you've ever had. I mean, you got Muay Thai and 4-ounce gloves. You got kickboxing. You got jiu-jitsu now. You have MMA with it being scored as a whole fight, hydration test instead of weight cutting, and then you got the drama, the best promotion, the UFC. And don't get me wrong, guys, this is more me boosting up the other promotions just because I'm aware of them, and I know you guys might want more information on them than the UFC because that's the main one everyone watches. But and then you also have the PFL. So I think that this is the best time in the world to be a combat sports fan. I think that I'm very grateful to be a combat sports fan, and I'm very excited to see what not only the PFL but the Saudi investors that are investing in the PFL, what they come up with. Because remember, guys, this is how the UFC started. They started with some rich motherfuckers like the Fertitta brothers dumping a whole bunch of money at a loss into the UFC to create this ginormous promotion, and then they started the Ultimate Fighter when it was about to go out of business, and they recreated this. They rebranded themselves. PFL's on that same track. Now Saudi Arabia is investing in them. I mean, we see Saudi, how they're affecting soccer, getting Cristiano Ronaldo and Neymar to come to them, and so many other big players, Karim Benzema, to come and play for them. We see how they're changing that landscape. We see that they're trying to get the Olympics in Saudi Arabia. Fighting is just another step. Fighting, and they're investing in the PFL, not UFC, not even One Championship, which I'm surprised. But in the PFL is who they're investing in. The clean sport of MMA is who they're investing in. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? It sounds like, and I'm gonna be rounding off the video soon, but it sounds like we actually have some real competition. It sounds like the future is bright for the PFL. I'm interested to see who they match up Francis Ngannou with probably will be with Wilder. First round knockout prediction. They say a mixed rules event. If they're doing mixed rules, I assume it's gonna be first round boxing, second round MMA, third round the fans. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about the landscape of MMA? Do you guys watch One Championship? Do you guys watch the PFL? Are you gonna start watching now? I mean, I watch all three of them. Sometimes the UFC doesn't have the best cards on, so I'll go and flip it on to PFL. I'll watch boxing, but that's because I had the time. You as a viewer who doesn't, maybe won't be watching every single day or things like that, or won't be always online looking for the best event, what are you going to be watching? Like I said, One Championship, 70% finish rate, scored as a whole, the hydration tests, the home of martial arts. Beautiful to watch, beautiful to see people's lives changed. UFC, the best drama, the best marketing, the biggest show on turf, if you want to call it that. The best MMA fighters, but they only stick to that one sport. The UFC Fight Pass, you get jiu-jitsu competition, but they only stick to MMA. PFL, they're talking about mixed rules events. It's different rule sets. You get points depending on first round, second round finish. There's context behind all these wins now. You get a little bit of everything with all these promotions. So let me know what you're going to be watching. Let me know the next PFL event or One Championship event that you're looking forward to. And as far as UFC 296, who y'all got? Let me know in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys tuning into the live stream. I'm going to try and do these more. Thank you for tuning in to Nwadei MMA. Now I'll see you guys in the next time. In the next one. Until next time. Alright. Peace, guys.